Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cope Life Nation show with me, your host, Dr. Charleston Gaines. I'm so excited to be here with my special guest. On stage with me is Aditi, and she is an expert in the topic that we're going to talk about tonight. I'm excited because I don't know as much about it as I should. We're talking about self care, and I can tell you right off the top that when I speak on self care, I speak on a lot of different things like hydration, sleep, proper nutrition, mindset, those kinds of things. And they're all very important. But at the same time, I know that there's a lot of us who have already tried those things and we're still feeling burnt out. We still feel tired. We still feel like life sucks a little bit. And so, what I wanted to do was learn more about different options and share those with you. And that's why I have on my special guest, Aditi, who is not just an expert in self care, but she's also a fellow author and professional speaker, coach, and consultant. And what she's going to bring today that's new to probably almost all of us is how you can use psychedelics in your self care journey. So, without further ado, welcome. I'm excited to have you here, Aditi. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited for today's conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And I just want to jump right in and ask the question. I'm going to ask you a two-part question. What is self-care and why is it important?
Beautiful. I have found for me in general, I find that self-care is really about paying attention and nurturing all parts of yourself. And why is it important? I feel like self-care really helps us align to the highest version of ourselves, the best version of ourselves, the part of us that really thrives. I feel like in the busy culture that we live in right now, we're always on the go. And I think that a lot of us are disconnected from ourselves. And I think that that is part of what creates a lot of stress because it's almost like we're just living a life that has been given to us rather than consciously creating and living a life that we want. And I think self care really helps you slow down and get that kind of clarity and purpose. And there's so many people who are feeling lost in terms of not knowing where they're meant to go, what they're meant to do, and how to make things better for themselves. And I feel like self care gives you that clarity.
I love that. I love that answer because you speak on a lot of topics that are important to me as well. First thing, though, you said a couple things you said I want you to describe in a little more detail the idea of being disconnected with ourselves. So what do you mean by that exactly? How we are disconnected by ourselves, and then how does the being disconnected with ourselves impact being able to show up as our best selves?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I can answer it by sharing something that happened to me when I was 20 years old. Half of my face got paralyzed, and I had something called Bell's palsy. And the doctor told me that this was due to stress. And I was really confused because I was like, stress? I was like, am I really that stressed? I was like, I'm only 20 years old. I have much more life to live still. And I've seen some grown folks and they seem a lot more stressed than I am right now. So, how can I be this stressed? And that's an example of us being disconnected from ourselves. And I have found multiple people that have told me that they have had Bell's palsy and they were also surprised. They were like, am I really that stressed? And that really just shows the disconnection that we have from ourselves that we don't even know when we're stressed because it has become so normalized. How does it affect us? It can affect our physical health, it can affect our mental health. So it can really slow us down and stop us from maybe thriving in our work life, in our personal life, in all areas of our life. So I really feel like it can become a setback when we are so disconnected from ourselves and we're not really aware with like what our limits are, what we're able to do, what we're not able to do. And I think that's why a lot of people burn out because they don't even know what their threshold is. They don't even know when they're crossing it. And I think that self care really helps you build that connection and relationship with yourself so you can kind of manage your stress better.
I definitely agree with that. When you talk about people not really even knowing what their threshold is, we often look at our threshold as how much work can we do, as if the more work we can do, the better humans we are, something like that. And it kind of
Yeah,
doesn't make sense, right? Because there's so much more to you than your productivity. But
right.
you mentioned what happened to you when you were 20 years old. And so I'm just curious, that experience happened to you when you were so young, and now you're focused on self care. So, can you kind of talk about that journey and how you got to the point of wanting to focus on self care and wanting to help other people?
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting story because that experience happened when I was 20, and I think after it passed, because the paralysis is temporary, about 3 months or so. So after that passed, I did take a stress management class, and I did try to like learn a little bit about how to manage stress. But I will say it kind of went out the window once I joined corporate America because everybody was working all the time and hustling, and work and productivity is favored more than health and vacation days and all those things. And it was more about like what you could accomplish and do in corporate America per se, like in your role. And it was always a competition, right? To get promoted or to move up or, to get noticed or, get an award at work. And it's just always felt like this competition. So I kind of got swept into the hustle culture once I joined corporate America. So that like stress management lesson like kind of went out the window for about 5 or 6 years until I started going into kind of like a depression burnout because of loss of purpose, feeling confused about my next steps. And eventually I ended up, I really wanted to get into marketing. And I feel like my quarter life crisis kind of helped me move into that space. So I went to get my master's degree in marketing communications, ended up opening my own marketing business. I was working with small business owners, helping them with branding and storytelling. I'm a writer, so I love helping brands write their story and tell their story. And this is where it got interesting. When I was working with these business owners, I feel like we were talking about marketing maybe 20% of the time. And like 80% of the time, people were talking to me about their life. They were talking about stress. They were talking about overwhelm, how they were trying to juggle all the things. And that's how I ended up slowly transitioning into the stress management and self care work because I found that that was way more important and the marketing would get done. But I felt like, being able to manage your life, manage stress was such an important life skill that hasn't been taught to us at home, at work, in schools. So it's like I felt like this ended up becoming a bigger calling for me. And when I experienced my own burnout and being able to work through it and being able to reduce my burnout and find my own kind of work life balance, I started teaching about it and writing about it. And I remember when I had gotten into a really low place at one point years ago, I had decided that if I ever get to the other side of this, I'm going to help other people when they're in a low point too. And that's actually how my book was born, The Self Care Habit.
The Self Care Habit. I've heard of that book. I've heard of that book.
Hey,
Yeah.
I
But the
love it.
difference between your copy and my copy is that you're the author and mine is signed by the author. Hold
Yes,
up,
I love
hold
it.
up. Don't want anyone to think I'm lying. Oh man, look, I gotta find the angle.
Yes,
Yes,
I love it.
definitely, definitely. I love this, and I love your story and your focus on it. And before I go any further, in case anyone's interested in getting their own copy, there's a link to it. And the truth is, the reason why you should not just buy the book, but really focus on self care is because of exactly what you just said, Aditi, is that we get burnt out. And one thing that we talk about quite often is social comparison. And you hear all the time, don't compare yourself to other people on Instagram and their lives and their pictures and their reels. It's fake, it's not real life. But what you were talking about was real life. You didn't look at their Instagram reels. You could see who got promoted. You could see who was getting a raise. And so that comparison is real life.
Yeah.
And so when you think about people that are going through that right now, how can how can they apply self-care specifically to comparing themselves in corporate America, right? In business, not Instagram, but in business, how can I use self care to help me when I feel like a coworker or colleague is getting ahead and I'm not?
Yeah, I think it's really about asking the important questions because sometimes I feel like we end up in this kind of like rat race of all the things. And we think that, I think sometimes we get confused about what we want. I feel like there's a lot of things that I thought I wanted because that was just what I was socialized to want. And I kind of was going after things that maybe I didn't really truly want on a heart level. So I think like asking the questions of like, what is truly important to me? What is the kind of work life balance that I truly want? Do I want this position only because it pays more? Or do I want it because it would make me feel better about myself? Or do I truly want these responsibilities and to do this work? And I think it can become a really blurred line because oftentimes, especially when you're in a corporate environment, everyone has kind of one mind. Like, we're all going for this promotion, we're all going for this thing, like, we're all got to do this thing. And ends up being a little bit of pressure, maybe even peer pressure or company pressure to follow a certain path. And I think me stopping and asking all of those questions when I had my quarter life crisis is what really changed the game for me because I realized I didn't want to climb the ladder in this industry that I was in when I was in consulting. I decided that I wanted to do marketing. And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't stopped and asked those questions. I would have followed the rat race like everybody else. And I would have done these like requirements that they had of us to write certain things and write certain proposals in an industry that I did not want to work in, but I just ended up there because of some of the skills in my background, but it wasn't truly where I wanted to be. And so I think like, so that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it, if that path is truly what you want, and you didn't get it and someone else is getting it, I think it's an opportunity to realize that that is also available for you. If it is truly a desire that you have, that this isn't your last chance. I think we tend to think that there's only one shot we have, and that creates a lot of suffering for us. So I think the self-care here is to realize that this is also possible and available for you. Just because this person got it doesn't mean it's not for you. And maybe you might be like, well, Aditi, there was only one position available. Well, maybe your position is meant to be maybe in another company or in another department. I think as soon as we think in limitation, it creates more suffering. So if you can realize that, or you can decide even that this is also available for me, and use it as a learning opportunity to see, what are the areas that will allow you to also have that opportunity that you want, and also realize that, use it as a self-worth check as well. Like, what am I making it mean that I didn't get it? Because then there's a lot of stress and emotional suffering that comes with that as well. Well, it must mean that I'm not good enough. It must mean that I'm never going to get it, or whatever it might be. Like, start to pay attention to what is the inner dialogue that's going on inside of your mind.
I love that. I love that you hit on so many points. You hit on so many points. One thing that you said was, I'm going to tell a little of my own story here. Is you said, what does it mean if someone gets that position instead of you? And for me, I applied for a job and I really wanted this job because I previously had the job. Then I took another position, but now this job was fully remote.
Yeah.
Oh, let me do that. Let me do that from the dining room table. Like, yes, I can do that, right? And I had a friend that I worked with a few years ago. I didn't know that she applied for the job, but what happened was I did not get the job. Then my friend posted on LinkedIn that she started a new position. And I said, "Oh, I see the job she got." But I was happy for her
Yeah.
because I knew the job that she had before she didn't like. And because I had this job before, I knew certain people in that position. So I reached out to them and I said, I see that this person got the job. I think you made an excellent choice. These are some things because she's kind of quiet, but she's really an expert in these things, and it's amazing. She's going to be great. And I really enjoyed, like, that was a value of mine to be positive, and I was glad for that because I felt like if it was meant for me, then I would have had that position.
Right.
But You said a lot, but one thing you mentioned that I think is very important was work life balance. And to me, that connects directly to self care because a lot of people look at work life balance as the number of hours. Work life balance is 8 hours at work, eight
Yeah.
hours at home, 8 hours sleeping. And well, the first thing you realize is that it's just hard to come by 8 hours of sleep, even if you're not working. But but besides that, when I look at balance and people look at those numbers, self care and balance don't add up that way. And so, how do we apply self care to make a difference when we're not at work?
I think what's most important is, again, asking those questions to yourself. So, one
Yes.
of the biggest things I teach in my self care work is that it really is a personal experience, a personal choice, and it comes through self discovery, right? So some people want to spend more time at work than they do in their personal lives because it is truly what fulfills them, fills up their cup, makes them feel good. And that might be one person, right? They might want to have like much longer hours and more time in that. Whereas other people, they may want to do the bare minimum that they need to do to get through work so they can go home and do and spend time with whatever they want to spend time with, you know? So it really is a personal decision, and there is no right or wrong. Like, that's one thing I keep emphasizing. There literally is no right or wrong because for some people, like, cooking and cleaning is so therapeutic and stress relieving, where for other people, it is the most stressful thing in the world. You know what I mean? So I really think work life balance is a personal experience, a personal choice. And it is about that self discovery to ask yourself those questions. What does work life balance mean for me? If I could have anything in the world, what would that look like? How much time would I want to spend doing work? How much time would I not? And again, that might also change season to season, because there might be a time where you have some projects that are ramping up and you might be putting more time towards work at that time. Or there may be times, where you're ramping back and you're like, all right, well, I have focused on enough work things and now I want to scale it back a little bit. But you're right, it's not about the numbers or the percentages, but really what feels right for you. What makes you feel balanced? What makes you feel centered? And it's finding that answer for yourself, and it's never going to be a perfect equation, and that's why I really believe in 1% wins. Even if you feel 1% more balanced, we're winning. So that's great, because I think people want to find this 100% perfect work life balance, but that's not the case. I mean, I think sometimes it's just working it week by week, day by day, month by month. Just even finding 1% more balance for yourself is amazing.
I completely agree with you there. You remind me of the book, The Tipping Point. I don't even know what year that came out. It might have been 15 years ago. I'm not sure. But when you say the 1%, you're not measuring that on a daily basis. What percentage is work, what percentage is relaxation, whatever. But the next 1% could be the tipping point into the life that you desire and deserve. And so you just build on that. I love that. And there's the self-awareness piece. And I focus on emotional intelligence, and you keep talking about that because it is critical. You have to know what your values are, what's important to you, things like that. You can't just follow someone else's advice, where maybe you can look on YouTube somewhere and it says self-care, do this in this order. And I've seen so much of that. You'll feel so much better if you follow this routine, and the routine says what? Take an ice bath at 4:30 in the morning or something.
Meditate at 3 a.m., you know?
Right. And I'll pass on that one. So I guess according to those people, we'll never find that balance. But back to what you were saying, that self-awareness is the connecting with our truer selves. One thing I want to talk about a little bit though is when we're talking about self-care, it's not just being at home resting, it's some form of activity that's more than just what you're watching or what you're thinking. So I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the mind body connection as it relates to self care.
Yeah, definitely. I think that one of the biggest things that I teach in the book is really about self-care is not about doing. And that's kind of what you're referring to, I'd say. Like people think that they need to be doing something. You know, we have this kind of obsessed culture of doing. So we think, oh, like I didn't do self-care this weekend because I didn't go to yoga. Or I didn't do self-care because I didn't eat my greens today, or whatever it might be. So then we start feeling bad about ourselves. And, you know, I feel that self care is not about the things that you're doing, but it's rather the person that you are being. So, what if
Yes.
instead of focusing on what actions did I take, instead look at who was I to myself today? Was I
Yeah.
kind to myself? You know, did I give myself a break? Um, did I take a moment to step back before I jumped into something? So, and like and it really varies again person to person, but I think like one thing that is really helpful in terms of it, I'd love to share the care formula that I teach in the book, because it kind of helps break that down if you are wanting to have something to do. And I feel like it gives a combination of touching in all those areas of the mind body connection. And the first one, so the care formula is based on care. CARE is the acronym. So C starts with compassion. So how can you have compassion for yourself in this moment when you're in a moment of stress, or even just on a daily basis? You can use this formula for a moment of stress, or also just to help you engage in self-care. So compassion for yourself means, you know, speaking kindly to yourself, creating space for yourself, listening to yourself, um, giving yourself that attention. And then A is actually for attention. So A is for attention, paying attention to all parts of yourself, paying attention to your body, paying attention to your mind. You know, a lot of times stress symptoms do come up in our body. And so paying attention to the tension you might feel in your shoulders, or the headache you might be having after work or after something stressful happened at home, whatever it might be. Just paying attention, like noticing what's going on for you, because that's where we get reconnected to ourselves. We talked about the disconnection earlier. So I feel like the attention helps us reconnect with ourselves and paying attention to all parts of ourselves, our mind, our body, our spirit, our emotions. And then R is for recharge. So that's really about stepping back. Um, Stopping the doing and just letting yourself be, or engaging in activity that allows you to disconnect from your day to day, whether that be yoga, going outside in nature, um, drinking water, whatever, talking to a friend, all kinds of things. So recharge is like whatever recharge activity feels good for you. And then E is about engaging. So this is kind of coming back into it. Let's say you were in a stressful situation and you know you had compassion for yourself. You paid attention to what was going on coming up for you. Then you recharge by stepping back and taking a walk outside. So E is engage, which is all about re-engaging with the situation or re-engaging with yourself, re-engaging with life, whatever that looks like for you. So whether that means making a decision, or whether that means going back to work, or um, deciding to engage with yourself differently because you realized maybe how much stress you're in today, for example.
I love that. I love that so much care, compassion, attention, recharge, and engage. And I'm not going to repeat all of what you just said. I didn't memorize it, but for anyone that wants to know more detail about it,
It's all in the book.
yes, it is. And I love that. And you talk about paying attention, and we've talked multiple times. We've mentioned really connecting or disconnecting, right? And I mentioned the mind body connection. One thing that you talk about is being active, engaging, but also being inactive. And that's very important when you realize, for some people that they're turning self-care into a to-do list.
Yeah.
And
And
so
it's like
the self
another headache, another chore. And that's the last thing I want self care to be for people.
and so for some people, they do all of these things and they just don't feel their lives elevating to the next level that they wanted to. And when I say elevating to the next level, that means whatever that person decides that it means. It's not a specific definition. Maybe elevating for some people is more peace or more rest or better connection with themselves to position them to better connect with their family. So it's whatever they want it to be. Um, and so I bring that up because sometimes it's not enough, and you have to step up and do more. And one thing that people have to recognize about doing more for themselves is that you're worth it. Your rest is worth it. Your self care is worth it. Your livelihood is worth it. Reaching your potential is worth it. And the truth is, everyone that loves you and cares about you wants you to reach that next level, the next level of whatever you want to reach. Because as you elevate your life, you elevate those around you. And so for some people, that could mean turning to psychedelics. And so what I want to know from you is kind of why that's even an aspect of your life at all.
Me personally.
You can answer it however you want to.
Okay, yeah. I'll share, I struggled a lot with depression most of my life, but I didn't realize it until probably my mid to late 20s is when I started to understand that this is not normal to feel this way. This is called depression. Because I genuinely didn't know. I just thought like this is just how life is. Life just sucks. You know what I mean? And I kind of got introduced to psychedelics in a recreational form initially. And then I ended up working with a shaman for many years, for 10 years, in fact, with psychedelics, with my own depression. And I found it to be a life changing experience because sometimes I feel like there's only so much talk therapy that you can do. There's only so much, I was engaged in a lot of different kind of healing modalities, but there's something about psychedelics that helps kind of break through some stubborn barriers that maybe you haven't been able to break through in your brain for many years. They often say that psychedelics can, it kind of like it cuts through all the knots in your brain and goes straight to maybe whatever it is you're struggling with. So it can cut down like 5 years of talk therapy into like one psychedelic therapy session. And again, that is, results vary from person to person because everybody interacts with psychedelics differently. But I will say for me, psychedelics really changed my life because there were so many parts of my brain that just felt so defeated and I just could not see another way. And psychedelics really opened up my brain to see other perspectives, to see other ways of being, of living, and realizing that there was so much more to life than what maybe my narrow minded brain was showing me because of what society had conditioned me to believe about life. And especially when you live in a society where everyone thinks the same way, to be
Yes.
able to think outside of that box is extremely difficult, but psychedelics helps you kind of break through that barrier so you can think bigger than the environment around you, which I think is one of its most biggest superpowers. So that's kind of how I found myself in it. And then actually these last few years, I have been working with a psychedelic therapy. So I've worked with hundreds of clients now with being able to do this work. So I have seen firsthand clients having symptoms of depression lifting, symptom of anxiety lifting, clients being able to process grief, breakup, so many things that they have been struggling to process for years. But with psychedelics, they're able to make a bigger breakthrough. And I think it's because it's able to reach parts of our brain faster than maybe everyday life may be able to.
I absolutely love everything you said. And one thing that I want to make clear is that you're talking specifically about the way it impacts the brain. And a lot of people don't understand different physiological aspects of the brain as it applies to things like self care or healing. And so I want to talk briefly about a TED talk. And I'm mentioning this TED talk specifically because anyone can go on YouTube and look it up, right? Instead of, something that I have saved on my computer or something. I don't remember the exact person, but it's talking about brain imaging. And the TED talk title is something like what I learned through 22,000 images of the brain. It's something like that. And what this guy was saying is that, and of course, he's an expert in neuroimaging and neuroscience. And he mentioned that when he was younger, one thing his grandfather said is if something is broken, you should take a look at it. And so he talked about neuroimaging. And then in the TED Talk, he shows actual images from fMRIs, functional MRIs, which are what is actually happening in the brain during certain conditions. And so the brain's actual physical makeup looks different in someone with depression or PTSD or anxiety and some of these other conditions. And so what you're saying that I think a lot of people may not have ever thought about before is that psychedelics work on the brain. It's not just your imagination, it's not just whatever some random movie said or some 80s themed after school special. We've moved beyond that. When I say we've moved beyond that, I'm talking about actual research. And I wanted to bring that up because everything that you just said is backed by science and is backed by the results that you've seen. So, what I would like for you to do is to take a moment and maybe tell me about maybe a story or two about the great impact that you've seen maybe on in some of your clients.
Yeah, for sure. I remember there was, for example, like I know that a lot of my clients get really stuck on the past. They're not able to let go of the past and they're not able to focus on the present moment because they are just so attached to something from their past. Maybe they're not able to let go of how something happened in a breakup or the last conversation they had with someone who ended up passing away and then the hurt they feel around that. So what I have seen is when they were working with the psychedelic medicine, many times my clients tell me that I was able to move back and see a zoomed out view of my life or the situation, and I was able to see it in a completely different way that I had ever felt before. So that helped them heal from that situation and not be able to, I don't know, think about it differently. So that kind of attachment, the tight grasp that they have to the past is like loosened up a little bit because they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe that makes a little more sense. So they're able to find some sort of peace because of this new perspective. And that's what allows them to detach from that and then allows them to be in this present moment. I had another client who was dealing with some grief over a loss of a child, and she just was very paralyzed in that space and she just could not move forward. And, in her psychedelic journey, she was able to make peace with the fact that this happened. And she was actually like telling me when she came back, she was like, you know what? Tomorrow is the first day of my life, of this next chapter of my life. And she had been so paralyzed for these last 5 years that she couldn't even think about a future. She was just struggling to make it through the day. So the fact that like something healed in her brain where she was able to find compassion for herself and find some sort of peace around losing her child and able to be like, okay, well, this happened and it absolutely stinks, but I have an opportunity to start over. And like one of those, that session's definitely stayed with me forever. And I don't think I'll ever forget that experience because it just really touched me. Because like I see my clients and how paralyzed they feel in their day to day. And to see them have that breakthrough and to have this new insight or this excitement about life where they haven't felt it. I also find a lot of empty nesters come to do this work as well because they feel a loss of purpose, loss of clarity, or they don't know what to do. I remember I also had this one client where he's like, Aditi, I have achieved everything in my life and I don't know what to do now. And that made him feel depressed. And so doing the psychedelic therapy helped him explore parts of himself and get new ideas of like, okay, well, what now? So and it's not only for depression and anxiety. Some people come for clarity and purpose. Show me my next steps. Where am I supposed to go now? Um, should I go back to school or not? Or, and what psychedelics really do is helps you go into your own soul, into your own mind, and find your own answers. So it's not like, you're being given answers from the outside. You're really going into yourself and finding your own truth. And I think that's what's so powerful. And it brings that connection that we were talking about, that connection back with ourselves. And that in itself is very healing.
Wow. So, like so much of what you just said really could spin us off into another, couple days worth of
I
conversation.
bet.
I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. So I want to just remember what you said and hit on a couple points. One thing that you said was that some people, of course, they use it to help them move through depression or anxiety. And some people it's grief, and some people it's clarity, things like that. And so it's not going to give you one specific thing. It's different for everyone. And what kind of guides it or makes it different for everyone is them knowing themselves, knowing what they want. And I bring this up because you're not going to get that from your prescribed antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. What they do is they target specific neurotransmitters. And so it's kind of like you want to impact maybe the volume of serotonin secretion or something like that. And so then that happens from the SSRIs, your antidepressants. And then whatever happens. And then when it wears off, you have to take the pill again. And so then, well, you're not getting clarity from that. The whole point of that is to minimize some symptoms, and maybe it will allow you to move forward. But you don't really get any say so in that. And what I mean by that is you take the drug and what happens. And then if it does what it's supposed to and you feel a certain way, well, then you can just take it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And the psychedelics are not like that. You don't lose control. You don't become a slave to another medication. You don't have the fear that if you stop taking it, you're going to fall back into who or what you were before. But and so I just want to clarify certain things for the audience because I'm clarifying those things because they're based on myths that I had before. So I had this thought process of if you're going to do anything beyond, say, talk therapy or yoga or working out or something, then get it from your doctor. But doctors don't know everything. They can't know everything. And they certainly can't know everything about you. But one thing that you said that just it kind of hit me differently because my last episode I was speaking to an expert in spirituality and you mentioned the soul. You specifically use that word because there is a whole level of this impact beyond just what fires or doesn't fire in your brain. So I just kind of want you to expand on that any way that you'd like to.
Like connecting with your soul in terms of the psychedelics you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm
I
getting
have,
excited.
you getting excited?
I'm getting excited because I'm learning and this can literally be life changing. When I say life changing, what do I mean? I mean, as you said, I cannot imagine losing my children. But you've seen that transformation. You've facilitated that transformation in someone without getting them hooked on a new kind of pill for
Yeah.
life. And so
Yeah.
I can feel my energy shifting getting this info from you.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, psychedelics really help you connect with your soul in ways that you probably, people have compared their psychedelic experience to be one of the most meaningful experiences in their life compared to having the birth of a child or the death of a loved one. So it's up there. Like, that's how. meaningful these experiences end up being for people. People have compared it to feeling like a very deep meditation or as close to a near death experience. So very, very impactful experiences for a lot of people. I personally have had some very mystical experiences where I have had an opportunity to, connect with my own soul, get clarity on my purpose. I actually had the honor of experiencing the mother of psychedelics, which is something called ayahuasca. And I got to experience it in the jungles of Tulum, Mexico. And we literally did it outside. And you drink the medicine. So you drink it in like a little shot glass, and there's a shaman there and facilitators there, so they're making sure everyone's okay and taken care of. But I've had clients tell me that their past one came and talked to them and relieved them of some, maybe they weren't able to have that last conversation with someone who passed away, so they were able to kind of have that conversation while in their psychedelic experience. Or like, for example, I've gotten clarity on my purpose. Like when I did ayahuasca, I heard a voice telling me that yes, you are supposed to write this book. This was before the book was published. I was struggling to finish it. So it was, and I was having a lot of doubts, like, am I on the right path? Like, should I be doing this? And I got a confirmation in my ayahuasca journey that yes, you are supposed to be doing this. This is your path. And yes, you are supposed to write this book. So finish it.
I love
I
it.
was
I
like,
love it.
okay. So I feel like, and everyone has different experiences, whether they are, hear the voice of their soul or whether they just feel a knowing in their heart that they didn't feel before. And you just get this profound sense of clarity and sense of belonging. I think that has been very healing as well. Feeling a sense of belonging through the use of it, because you just connect with something so much bigger than yourself. um, I've heard clients tell me that, they've connected with God. God came and talked to them during their session, or they went out into outer space in their mind and got some clarity about like what's really happening on this earth and why we are here. They understood the meaning of life now. So some really, really mystical things that I've heard from clients and that I've experienced myself, and it brings a profound kind of healing that I think that talk therapy can't, because it's kind of like you can know so much intellectually, like, okay, you should set boundaries, you shouldn't go back to that toxic situation, like, these things, but when you truly feel it in your body, that's when the transformation happens. And I feel like psychedelics help you get that body confirmation versus just a mental confirmation.
I love that because I love it because you're really bringing your full self. Like when you say someone had this experience or that experience, what's really going on is they're connecting with a deeper version of themselves. A lot of them that didn't know that existed.
Absolutely.
And so then what happens is they're still able to kind of, I don't know how to say it exactly because I don't have the experience, but based on like what you're saying, my thought process is they experience these things, but it's not like a complete loss of control. It's not just chaos. It is spiritually driven, and your spirit is a part of you. And so that goes back to what you were saying earlier about connecting with the deeper version of yourself. And I know from my research and people that I've spoken to, that is very difficult to do. It's very difficult for a lot of people to connect with that inner part of themselves. And so this is essentially helping them move closer to who they are so that they can provide for themselves in an emotional, spiritual way. So, my question for you, though, is it's unique to everyone and it's connected to your spirit, maybe in a way that you didn't even know was available to you. And so when some people hear that, they're afraid. So what do you say to the person who is afraid of trying this? Let me phrase that. They're afraid of trying this, yet they know everything they've done before did not work.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's different levels to it, and I think, one of the fears is just the fear of the unknown. Like, I don't know what I'm walking into. I don't know what to expect. I just don't know. It's just a new experience. So that's like a normal kind of like hesitation or fear. Anytime you do something new, you're going to have this kind of fear, you know? I did my first speaking gig on stage this weekend, and I had that kind of unknown, certain like unknown fear, because I was like, I don't know what it's going to feel like. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how I'm going to be, like, you know, so there's that kind of fear. And then the other kind of fear is the fear of facing yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that is the bigger one, and I feel that people are afraid to face parts of themselves that maybe they've avoided for a long time, or face, you know, things that are living inside of them, or they're just afraid of what's going to come up. They're afraid of what's going to happen afterwards. And again, these are all very normal fears to have. So what would I say to someone? I would say one, make sure you're working with a trusted professional if you are going to give it a try, because you definitely don't want to be maybe doing this in the streets. If you're new to this, you want to feel, you want to make sure you're in a safe environment, make sure that you are working with a professional, and make sure that you feel safe with the person that you are going to be doing it with. And just make sure you have a support system. You want to make sure that you know, you have a few close people who know that you're going through this experience, so that way when you come to the other side of it, you know that you have support waiting for you. I think having the support set up beforehand can help eliminate some of the fears around it. And then, you know, having a trusted guide that you're working with can also help eliminate some of the fears. And then if there's the fears of facing yourself, I think for that, it's really know that you're gonna come out with more clarity and more connection to yourself. And it may not happen right away. It may not happen, you know, in the way that you expect. But ultimately, I personally believe, and I can't speak for everyone because I know everyone can have a very different experience, but I feel like psychedelics bring you home to yourself. And that's something to look forward to. So,
I love it. I love it so much. The things that you're saying are so important. You say make sure it's with someone that you trust, and you said that your experience included having a shaman there.
yeah,
And I guess what I want people to understand is that when you say there was a shaman there, people need to understand that a shaman is part of an ancient practice. And so some of your antidepressants and some of your anti-anxiety medications, they're newer based on newer research, they're not more effective. There's no spiritual connection between you and the person prescribing it, and there are ulterior motives to you being prescribed it. If you have to take antidepressants for the rest of your life and you have that good health insurance, that's a stream of income for a company for the rest of the time that you're taking it. Shaman have been around a lot longer than antidepressants. This is a practice that is tried and true the world over. And this shaman is not going to get residual income off of you for the next couple of decades. So,
right.
so when I think about trust, to me, that's a big part of it. And another thing you said is a support system, and that's so important because it's not just a lot of people think of support system as when I'm hurting, who has my back? If I'm going through something, who's going to be there for me? But when I think of a support system in regards to trying psychedelics to help you heal, to help you move forward, to help you find clarity, your support system needs to be people who are encouraging and are not going to judge you. They're not going to look at you as if self care is in some way immoral, right? Some people think self care is bad unless you do it the way that they told you to do it. So we can free ourselves from that judgment, connect with someone we trust. And then the last thing you said was, and this is just a thought I had. The last thing you said was is the fear of facing yourself. And I think the fear of facing yourself as an adult is a grown-up version of a child being afraid of their shadow.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. And so really what happens is you recognize that you are not out to get you. You can trust you. And if you kind of don't, well, again, be with a professional whom you trust and have a good support system. And so I love that you've shared all of those things with us. What I would like for you to do for us, though, as we're running out of time, we have about 5 minutes or so left. I want to know more about this profession and specifically what do you have to offer?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
as I say that, I'm putting the link for people who want to connect with you directly. What do you have to offer for us?
Yeah, definitely. So, I have a few things. I work with, I have self-care programs that are either self-study that you can go through, or you can do one-on-one private coaching with me, which I'm offering at the moment. And I run a self-care boot camp. So I have an opportunity for people who really want to put this at the forefront of their life and give it their like 110%, like, and are just ready to really prioritize themselves in a way that they never have. So self-care boot camp is one of my main signature programs, and I offer complimentary self-care assessments. So invite you to anyone who's watching to come do one with me, because they're really, really powerful, give you a lot of self-awareness on kind of where you are in your self-care journey and where there might be opportunities for you to delve deeper into. And I also send out self care reminders, and those are complimentary. So you can sign up for those, where I send self care tips and stories and reminders every month. And you'll be able to find all of that on that link below.
I love it. I love the programs that you offer. When you say, really committing, right? The 110% committing to self-care, committing to improving. More people need to understand that they are worth it. You're worth the commitment. You're worth the work. You deserve to be happy. And if you can't break through, then get help. And what I love about what you offer is the free self-care assessment. Because I'm gonna tell you this, right? I'm gonna tell you something that you already know, but I'm gonna tell you this. A lot of people have no idea what a self-care journey is, and they don't want to put all of this money into something. So if they can just connect with you and get the free self-care assessment, they can essentially learn what it is, where they are in their journey, and they can learn, some of them, how bad they need self-care. So you mentioned, well, I'll say this. I know that you've also provided some services to businesses or corporations, right?
Yes.
And so you just have a wide range of experience, and you just spoke on stage. And so I really appreciate that you really are covering all of the bases, because people need this self-care. They really do. And so what do you say to the person who is, how do I put this? What do you say to the person who maybe believes that self care isn't for them because they're just not worthy? They're not worthy of the 110% commitment.
They don't believe they're worthy of the commitment. Um, Honestly, I feel like self-care makes everything better. Self-care
Yes.
really, it really does. Like it makes everything better. So whatever you're stressed out about right now, whatever you're feeling overwhelmed with, or whatever in whatever places you may not feel good within yourself, self-care can help with all of that. So I say give yourself a chance. I the reason I'm so passionate about this work too is because I don't want people to end up in the hospital before they start practicing self care. And you're worth having an amazing life, being on this planet. And it starts with paying attention to yourself first, and then you'll be able to give into all the places that you want to. Because I think that, when we have a strong relationship with ourselves, we're able to then have that strong relationship with everyone else. But if we have a weak relationship with ourselves, then it's going to be kind of like fragmented as we're going out into the world. And your life can, just expand in so many beautiful ways. And you can just, most importantly, just feel better inside and out through practicing self care. And you deserve to give yourself that gift.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm so grateful that you were here spending this time. I learned a lot. I'm confident that the audience learned a lot, because some of us have had a lot of preconceived notions, and you're able to really help dispel those myths today. I really appreciate you And so I just wanted to point out that for anyone watching this, you can see by her name at Aditi Creative if you want to connect on social media. I mean, I've already connected with her, so this is for you, not me. We're already connected across social media, and I've already been a benefactor over the last few years of her great content. If you want to connect, that's how you connect. And I want to say thank you. I appreciate you. And if there's any last words you have for us before we close out, just go in and share one last bit of wisdom for our people.
Yeah, for sure. You deserve to live a life that makes you feel alive and finding your flow. So I hope that we connect soon and talk to y'all soon.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you. And to all of my Cope Life Nation citizens, remember to live each day with kindness, optimism, positivity, and empathy. And it will be easier to do that if you focus on self care. I appreciate you, Aditi, and I will see all of you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.